Good evening. Welcome to the City of Topeka Planning Commission meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings, and to make recommendations to the city council on planning items. Please note that the city council rules state the public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the planning commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the city council. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the city council next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. For cases that require public hearings, the procedure will be as follows. First, the planning department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or their representative. Then we will receive public testimony. Public comments should be addressed solely to the chair and are limited to 4 minutes. Chris, please take the roll.
Mr. Armstrong is absent. Mr. Freed is absent. Mr. Dean?
Here.
Ms. Jordan?
Here.
Mr. Kennard?
Here.
Ms. Lawson?
Here.
Ms. Messina?
Here.
Ms. Ringler?
Here.
We have 6 and a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of or consideration of the August 19th minutes. Are there any corrections, comments? I didn't see anything that needed to be changed. Any other? Is there a motion?
I would move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Chris?
Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Abstain.
Mr. Kennard?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Abstain.
Ms. Messina?
Abstain.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0 with 3 abstaining.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest or ex parte communications regarding tonight's agenda?
Madam Chair, I have a ex parte communication.
Okay.
I was contacted by telephone on the Sports Zone PUD
Okay.
by a relative of one of the adjacent property owners. It was prior to me getting the packet, so I didn't know anything about the project. He was just asking some questions about the process, and so I don't think there's anything said about it, but
Okay. Yes.
contact is there.
Okay. Any other declarations? With that, we will proceed to the public hearing portion of our agenda. The first item on that agenda is Milk and Honey Coffee Company, LLC, a change in zoning from O&I 2 to C2. Ms. Driver.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Chairman. This case is located at 2200 Southeast Powell Street, comprises approximately half an acre, and it's located at the northeast corner of Southeast Powell and Southeast 29th Street. The applicant has requested the rezoning in their attempt to reuse the existing 1,460 square foot vacant bank building for a drive-through coffee shop. The property was rezoned to office in 1977. The bank was constructed in 1978 and was used for a bank until nearly soon after 2016. Properties to the north are single-family dwellings and zoned R1. Property to the south is C2 and undeveloped land. The property to the west is zoned C4 and contains a supermarket and gas pumps and a fast food restaurant. Property to the east is O&I 2, office and institutional, and contains an insurance office. The purpose and intent of the C2 district is established to provide for those commercial activities which serve a major segment of the population. The extent and range of uses are in the moderate to medium intensity, with ground floor area limitations and prohibition on outside sales and storage of supplies, materials, and products. Some of the uses allowed in C2 are retail stores and services, restaurants, including fast food drive-thrus, healthcare facilities, hotels, liquor stores, pawn shops, secondhand shops, pharmacies with drive-throughs, theaters, tobacco sales, automobile service stations, and repair shops and car washes. Outside storage is not prohibited, is prohibited. Home improvement centers with lawn centers outside are prohibited. Drinking establishments or bar taverns require a conditional use permit in C2 zoning. At the time this applicant applies for a building permit, a parking lot plan will be needed and submitted at that time to review the drive-through and stacking requirements. Full compliance with the landscape regulations is not required because there's not expansion to the building being proposed. However, a landscape plan would be needed with the building permit since a residential buffer zone is required under 18-235-060. The city's traffic engineer did review the request, indicated a traffic impact study is not needed for the drive-through on the site. They made some comments as to where access should be placed for the drive-through. A parking lot plan submitted as part of a building permit should identify how those requirements are met and is required by the city's traffic engineer. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on Thursday, August 22nd. The applicant has also included some letters of support and other information in the packet. No opposition to the zone change has been expressed. Planning staff reviewed the case relative to findings and the golden criteria. Those findings are identified in the staff report. A few comments about those findings. The proposed C2 zoning on the property is compatible with the character of the area. It's located between heavy commercial zoning to the west and office and institutional zoning to the east, and still provides an appropriate zoning transition between uses. The C2 zoning on the property is compatible with zoning and uses of property nearby. It's a relatively small site, transitions to O&I 2 zoning on the east and sits directly across from C2 zoning on the south. The building's been vacant and unused since 2016. A previous owner did express some difficulty finding a tenant under the current zoning. The property is located on the edge of a commercial node as designated by the Land Use and Growth Management Plan. Generally speaking, C2 does allow some uses with some higher uses that have higher traffic generation, longer operating hours than a former bank. Commercial uses typically have incompatible hours with residential, and there are some negative impacts associated with those uses. C2 does allow automobile-oriented uses such as car washes, service stations, and repair shops. However, staff believes these uses would ultimately require significantly more changes to the site and would have to satisfy additional site plan review and landscaping requirements. The change of use to the building can be designed to mitigate against any potential effects, particularly if a landscape buffer is provided on the north side, and as recommended by the traffic engineer, the drive-through is oriented to the south side, or on the south side of the building. Ultimately, the positive outcome of having a well-maintained, lighted, and occupied building should outweigh any of those negative effects that could potentially occur. Staff is recommending approval of C2. The applicant is here to take your questions as well, and I'm open for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Driver? At this time, will the applicant or the applicant's representative like to step forward?
Should we get started? Okay. All right, first of all, I just want to thank you guys so much, and it's been quite the trial that we've had, just waiting since July 20th to actually come to this point of realizing a dream really come true. So first of all, I am Darlene Morgan. This is my partner, Chris Hartman, and I'll give him a few moments to speak, although I get pretty excited and I start talking a lot. I'm a graduate of Highland Park High School, and so I'm familiar with the area. I have 3 daughters that attend Shawnee Heights High, and Shawnee Heights High high school, middle school, and Tecumseh South. And so I have a lot of vested interest in running a coffee shop in this particular area of the town. I really feel strongly about bringing the two communities together, Highland Park and Shawnee Heights, and just really making this community driven. We believe strongly in revitalizing East Topeka, not to mention the fact that we feel strongly about just being that trendsetter that is not afraid to get into these buildings and open them up and just be the ones that are saying, hey, we need to, encourage more local businesses in this area of town. Don't be afraid to open your shops over here. We have so many opportunities on the west side of town. Let's bring everybody east. We have a lot of businesses, residents that are starting to really prosper around the Croco and California area, and so I just feel like it, very strongly about it, but I'll let Chris speak more on that aspect. I think I could really summarize this and something that I really wrote up today. So I think once I read this, I just kind of want that to really come through as part of the reasons why I want you guys to really consider approving the rezoning, if you would, please. So if you allow me, please, and I'll begin. Honestly, this has been considered since last December with us thinking about a food truck. It wasn't right. I wanted the community to be more involved. I want to have a place that actually gives back to our town, where people can meet and there can be ministry, mentoring, tutoring, meetings, lectures, poem nights, and artwork displayed by all the talented students around town. In particular, I want it to be a place that brings Highland Park High, where I graduated from, and Shawnee Heights, where all my girls would graduate from, together along with all the neighbors and the people in the area. I picture young people sitting with the elderly and listening to their stories, and the older people being amused by the energy of the youth. And all the while, God looking down and saying, well done. Silly, maybe, but it is no secret I want the shop to be community driven, a safe haven and a place for people to gather and feel comfortable at. I'll be blessed if we make a profit. I am generous, but I know it will be okay. It may be tough, and I've had many conversations with my girls. One in particular is here, Olivia over here, who attended just for the whole experience of it, and just kind of preparing them for what may become their second home. They are happy about it, and they have wonderful ideas themselves. And so I just want to thank you once again, and I encourage you to attend our shop because I feel positive that this is going to get rezoned, and I know that it's going to be a beautiful, wonderful place that is absolutely going to be a wonderful part of East Topeka and Topeka in general. Chris?
So I'm Chris Hartman. I'm the almost silent partner. And that's okay. There's probably a reason for that. I would talk to you maybe more a little bit about the business side of things. My previous experience, my previous job, I was the Chief Financial Officer at Family Service and Guidance Center for the last 18 years. I think any of you who are familiar with that organization know it's one of probably the strongest fiscally nonprofits in the community. I hope that I had a piece of that. I'm a firm believer in no money, no mission. Darlene and I have some very lofty goals, some things we want to accomplish. The only way to accomplish that is to make sure that the operation also makes enough money to support the operation. We've done a lot of number crunching. We've worked with SCORE, who have volunteer mentors here in Topeka. We've met with them. They thought I was a little optimistic on my first 6 months. They thought I was a little pessimistic or conservative after that. I take that as a good sign that we're going to have a going concern here, even based on maybe my conservatism, which is how I would do numbers and always have done numbers. That's, I think, important for you all to know that we're investing our own money in this, in addition to a small business loan to buy the building. But this is also our retirement money that's going into this thing. We want it to work. We want it to be a going concern. We want it to be something that we can do for the community, but that we can also hand it down to our families to continue to do for the community. We've tried to instill that community involvement in all of our kids. Even the 10-year-old is learning that at an early age. And I won't bore you with all of the other details. We're very excited about this. I don't project excited. I'm sorry. I'm a numbers guy. This is my excited look, but we're super excited. We spent a great deal of time this morning meeting with Kevin Kennard of Blue Jazz Java. The excitement is pretty infectious. We're excited to get going and to start serving some really nice coffee on the east side of town. We'll be pretty exclusive over there, at least until somebody else figures out what we're doing.
There was one more thing. I know there was concern about our experience, and I just wanted to elaborate on that. I personally ran a burrito business. It was actually a licensed burrito business out of my home for 3 years, which helped pay for my girls to attend Care Paravel until we moved out to the Shawnee Heights area. I currently run 413 Sports Photography, which you would find on Facebook, which if any of you guys have kids at Hayden, I just recently did the senior photos that are hanging up in the gym right there of the volleyball students. So I also do sports photography, so I'm absolutely able to do retail business and not afraid at all of just the challenge that it has in itself. And I think there was one other thing, and that was, I know there was some opposition in your packet, but that has been remedied, and I hope you guys got the email that we do now have somebody that is absolutely on board with us. So any questions?
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Can you remind me how long the building has been vacant?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was sold, or Bank of America moved out in March of 2016, and it's been vacant since then. So that, what is it, 2.5 years? 3.5 years? 2.5 years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And there was something in the packet too that mentioned, the city of Topeka mentioned that, you know, the longer a building stays vacant, the more difficulty it has getting an owner or some type of business placed in that. So we're just really honored to be able to have this opportunity to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
At this time, we're going to open this agenda item up for a public hearing. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Discussion among commission. Are there any concerns based on what you read or heard?
I think when I looked at the, Madam Chair, when I looked at the packet, I thought it was a good location. It was next to other commercial properties. It was next to residential, which I think it's a good mix for that. I think it'd be a great thing to have it on the coffee shop on the east side of town. So I thought it was a good idea, and I wish them well.
Yeah, I as well have no opposition to it.
I like hearing lots about the business. I think we're tasked with looking a little long-term, you know, not to say anything about your potential for business, but if it does fail, we have to consider all of the other alternatives that might go in there. And I think Ms. Driver's comments about needing, you know, additional site work and permitting would maybe address those concerns if that ever did come up. When I first looked at the map, my concern was, ooh, it is a little close to the residential area, but I think there is still buffering there, so. Any other comments, questions?
May I say one more thing?
Very quickly.
That's the whole reason why we're purchasing it as well, in order to have a little bit more control over what should happen. We don't want that to happen, should we have to sell it or something. But we definitely have some vested interest from some people if that were to happen.
Sure. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, based on the above findings and analysis, planning staff recommends, based on findings and analysis of the staff report, I move to recommend to the governing body approval of the reclassification of the property from O and I-2 Office and Institutional District to C2 Commercial District.
I'll second.
Been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Chris?
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Mr. Kennard?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan? Aye. Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is PUD 1903. Wanamaker West Development, PUD. Mr. Nunaville.
Yes, Commissioners, good evening. This is an application for rezoning from C2 Commercial and ONI2 Office and Institutional to PUD Planned Unit Development for a 2.1 acre site located at 6017 Southwest 30th Terrace, west of Wanamaker Road. Development on the site in the future will be in accordance, is proposed to be in accordance with the C2 Commercial Zoning Group, use group rather, which is the existing zoning on 2/3 of the property, with other specific uses limited to self-storage types 1 and 2, along with building construction and mechanical contractor office. 1/3 of, as I had mentioned, 1/3 of the subject property is zoned ONI2 currently, with 2/3 being the balance of C2 Commercial. Adjacent north, C4 Commercial District, with the backside of the Hy-Vee Grocery Market actually facing the site on the north side of Southwest 30th Terrace. Adjacent and west, continuation of the ONI2 Office Institutional District, with vacant property immediately to the west of the site, and beyond that, a dental clinic located on Southwest Villa West Drive. Adjacent east, C2 Commercial District, with recently opened Club Car Wash with single-family residences to the east of Wanamaker Road beyond. Adjacent south, the city of Topeka's corporate limits is coincident with the south property line of the site, with unincorporated Shawnee County zoning designation of residential reserve to the south, and there is an existing residence there. In regard to compliance with development standards and guidelines, the PUD master plan does provide for buildings and setbacks, as well as density and dimensional standards concurrent with the C2 district. Transportation and access, Southwest 30th Terrace is designated as a local street, with the city's long-range plans anticipating its extension to the west, joining with Southwest Villa Drive. The proposed PUD master plan notates the need to complete Southwest 30th Terrace to a point adjacent to the west property line of the subject property as required by the City of Topeka Public Works Department. Regarding design standards, building elevations will be subject to the city's non-residential design standards, although storage buildings may be exempted from doors and windows requirements, and this is as notated on the proposed master plan. PUD master plan will be subject to the city's landscape requirements, with the master plan also indicating that a mix of evergreens and various types of trees shall be provided within 20-foot landscape setback along the street frontage. The applicant conducted a neighborhood information meeting on Wednesday, August 28th. City Council member Aaron Mays attended the meeting along with the applicant and city staff, and there were no other attendees. Staff did complete analysis as indicated in the staff report in regard to the golden factors. The proposed PUD master plan is found to be compatible with the existing and desired future character of the neighborhood, which includes a mix of uses, including commercial and office uses, as well as low-density residential uses. The subject property is vacant and has been never developed. Again, the Club Car Wash was just recently constructed on adjacent property to the east. The applicant's purpose for a change in zoning is premised on the current zoning not providing for a suitable range of uses. And further suggests that self-storage, both types 1 and 2, as well as a contractor's office, have marketable development potential at this location. From the inquiries that the city does regularly get regarding storage and contractors' offices, it would appear that there is local demand for these uses as proposed in the master plan. The relatively small size of the property, again, 2.1 acres, limits its development potential under the current or proposed zoning. Topeka Land Use and Growth Management Plan does include the subject property and adjacent properties as office. The effect of the PUD conditions, example limited uses, screening, landscaping, building design, etc., would be to serve as a suitable transition to the low-density residential area to the south, as would an office use, office designation is the case and intended. And lastly, office uses are not precluded on the site pursuant to the proposed master plan. Based on findings and analysis, planning staff is recommending approval of the proposed master plan with two conditions, one related to outdoor storage in terms of specifying its location as well as compatible and effective screening requirements. And then there's also a condition regarding parking and drive setbacks. And this concludes staff summary, and the applicant is available for questions as well as staff, of course.
Are there any questions for staff at this point? Okay, seeing none, would the applicant like to address the commission?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. These are interesting pieces where it's speculative based on a piece of property that has been for sale forever. And it's very difficult if you were, I don't know if any of you have driven out there or now the club car wash is a way to be able to, it gets a lot more people into this area. But prior to that, as you sit there, if you sit on that property, you look up to the north and it's a large giant wall. You look at it, it's high V, it's a 2-story, but it's a pretty plain block wall. And then you look off to your east and it's a car wash. So it's very difficult in the office characteristics to build to put the investment into a nice investment complex that really doesn't have a lot of sight lines or anything like that. And so working with Kansas Commercial, Mike Morris, and more or less trying to find something that would be marketable to sell, and that's the direction that we've gone forward.
Any questions for the applicant? Makes sense.
Thank you.
This item is open for a public hearing. I would now ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address this item. Please step forward. All right, seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Any additional discussion amongst the commissioners?
Madam Chair, that's not far from where I live. I'm by there all the time. The proposed use seems, very accurate, given the site location and its limitations. And I'm definitely going to be in favor of this.
Anyone else with thoughts, comments?
I think I concur with that, just the mass of the Hy-Vee store would be a detriment to a nicer office type building there, so, along with the car wash, so.
Okay.
I agree, and being slightly off Wanamaker doesn't help, so changing this could help improve the land value.
Something useful in there? Okay. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion?
Will, based on the findings and analysis in the staff report, I move to recommend to the governing body approval of the PUD master plan along with conditions.
I would second.
Get it taken care of. Been a motion and a second. Chris?
Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Mr. Kennard?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Our agenda here. Item 3 on the public hearing agenda is PUD 1902, Sports Zone PUD. Ms. Driver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This request is a rezone from R1 single-family dwelling districts with existing special use permits for community building and a private membership club and golf course, and a conditional use permit for outside recreation, retail sales, and food service, all to a PUD planned unit development master plan that would allow O&I2 office and institutional uses I-1 uses, limited I-1 uses, plus outdoor recreation type 1 and 2 and indoor recreation type 1, and any other uses that may be allowed under the existing conditional use permit. The existing special use permits, cases 6518 and 8913, would expire with this approval, since those uses would actually be allowed under the O&I2 zoning. Property is located at 3909 and 3907 Southwest Burlingame Road and comprises 23 acres, which is the front half of the owner's property on Burlingame Road. The proposed PUD rezoning is speculative, and there is no project for the site at the present time except to continue current uses. Ideally, the owner wants to have the option of selling off the southern portion, which is labeled as Tract C, for light industrial uses. The intent of the PUD master plan is to allow some limited light industrial uses but maintain compatibility with residential and the recreational character of the area. The northmost building, shown as Tract A, is currently used as an office, daycare, and dance studio. It's approximately 18,000 square feet. The larger sports zone complex, which is recreational facility, is 50,000 square feet. Background on the rezoning: 1960, the site was annexed and zoned at the time single-family residential. 1965 and 1989, special use permits were approved for the building on Tract A to allow a membership club and a community building for the night used by the Knights of Columbus. In 1998, the conditional use permit was approved for the construction of the sports zone facility, allowing indoor and outdoor recreation, retail sales, and food service. The area to the north is comprised currently of a church and multifamily apartments. The areas to the south, both to the south of Tract C and south of Tract B, are zoned light industrial and comprised of a Budweiser distributor and Capital City Oil. Area to the west is zoned R1 single family with the conditional use permit, and that's a portion of this owner's property that's contained within the floodway. And the area to the east is zoned R1 single family residential and contains 3 single family residences and a cemetery. The PUD establishes standards above the base zoning requirements that was done in an attempt to ensure compatibility with the residential to the east. Some of those requirements address traffic. A traffic impact analysis would be required if there's a substantial addition, new construction, or a major change of use. It addresses landscaping above and beyond the base landscape requirements, so that a substantial change of use would have to address landscaping as well. Tract A and B are required 30-foot front yard building setbacks if a new construction would be proposed. Southwest Burlingame is an arterial road. The PUD also requires that access on Burlingame will be further reviewed by the traffic engineer for consistency with city design specifications if there's a new addition, new building, or a major change of use to one of the existing buildings. Applicant conducted a neighborhood information meeting on Monday, August 26th. At the time of the meeting, no major objections were presented. Planning staff received phone calls from those neighbors to the east after the meeting who expressed concerns with the premature nature of their zoning action. And those are included in your packet. Planning staff considered the golden factors and evaluates the proposal in the staff report based on those factors. The proposed rezoning to accommodate office and institutional uses and light industrial uses for enclosed warehousing and light manufacturing on Tract B and Tract C, as well as indoor and outside recreation uses on Tract A, is in keeping with the surrounding area. Based on the pattern and land uses, the proposed uses as conditioned by the PUD with landscaping setback and limitations on the use and building should be compatible with the zoning and land uses of the property nearby. The intent of the original conditional use permit and special use permit was to limit the scope of uses since the area at the time was residential and not suited for industry. However, the site also does not appear to be as suited for R1 single family since residential has never existed on the property. And the very narrow scope of his existing special use permit also makes it difficult on the owner to market the property. The PUD is intended to allow the existing sports recreation, but broadens those uses to make it more feasible to market some of the undeveloped portions of its property, particularly Tract C. The property lies within an area that's designated on the north side, open space, parks and recreation, industrial and urban growth area, residential on the south side in the land use and growth management plan. For that reason, the PUD limits uses on the north tract to O&I 2 and outdoor and indoor recreation, and allows light industrial on the south tract, Tract C. The recommended PUD is anticipated to have few detrimental impacts on nearby properties since it does address improvements that may be needed with a change of use, as well as new construction and substantial additions. Planning staff did have some concerns that the driveway on the north side on the Burlingame may not be designed adequately for semi-tractor trailers, and therefore is recommending its use be limited to passenger vehicles and light trucks. All other access as conditioned would need to be taken across the existing driveway on 4201 Southwest Burlingame Road. Additionally, the PUD requires a traffic impact analysis if there's substantial changes of use or occupancy or new construction. There is a significant hardship on the landowner since the current zoning significantly limits allowed uses on the property, which have never been used for single family, and the cumbersome CUP and SUPs make it difficult to market other portions of his property. Staff is recommending approval subject to the 10 conditions in the staff report. Just want to make a note, and condition number, there are actually 2 condition number 4s, so one of those should actually be condition 5. And then on the first condition number 4, that is Tract C, not Tract 3. The applicant's representative is here to answer any questions that you may have, and I am open for questions as well. Thank you.
Any questions for staff at this point? Questions? If the applicant or the applicant's representative would like to come forward?
Madam Chair, Kevin Hollencook, Flat Strobel Commissioners, thank you for hearing us as well. I forgot to identify myself the last time I was up here, so I apologize. But to give a little history on this tract, I'd imagine most of you have probably been there at one point or another. It's kind of a staple of what our community is right now. A little more on the history is we do have the 2 owners, John Ostrowski and Tom Schmidtlein. And why they purchased it back in 1999 is they had kids involved in sports. They saw a need, so in comes the sports zone. And I think it's done a pretty good justice for Topeka and our children. They have numbers that show people coming to this complex ranging around 250,000 a year. And if you've been there, whether it be a Tuesday night right now, a Saturday, anytime, it's full, and the kids are using it heavily. So now we'll go to why this situation is going forward. It's rare we come up here, or I come up here, without specific uses on a PUD. So this is 2 in a row, which is very awkward on a night like this, but it's to provide flexibility. Both of the owners put their investments in, their kids are grown, and it gives flexibility on where this goes. In a perfect world, someone like Shawnee County or Parks and Rec comes, purchases this facility and makes it a county facility that I think would be great for the county or city of Topeka in that nature as well. But at the same time, they're not looking to sell the north piece. They're looking for flexibility. They have 3 tracks that are identified. They have all the property back to the west as well, but as Annie said, it's in the floodway, which means you can do practically nothing back there except for the uses that are happening now. And that's why we didn't put them in the PUD, because there's not a lot of reason to put them into a PUD when there's nothing you can do back there other than the uses that we have now from recreation, or there's a trail back to the west and things that benefit all of our citizens and back there, and there's access back there to be able to use it. In discussions with staff, we've kind of battle's probably not a great word, but discussed what type of uses for some of these tracks, because O&I 2 has some specifics on in case a new building was to come on that track day. As you look up to the church, a church is still a metal building just to the north of there, and the apartment up to the northeast of there is aged and isn't something that, if you're going to come in and put a large investment for an office building, that location is probably not number one on your list, just because this has slid over the years into a more industrial role, which is, although it fits perfectly for what we're trying to do, because Track C is the industrial use, which is surrounded. There was some question about traffic entering from the south entrance. If you see it between B and C, you'll see the two lines there, and if you've driven out there, there's a roadway that actually is a dedicated easement, an easement between the two property owners, an ingress-egress easement that Sports Zone has full maintenance of. So that is dedicated. If it was sold, that easement is still going forward, and if trucks were to use this facility or anything else, the owners don't have an issue with them coming through the south entrance, because all of us that have been there, we understand the issues in the traffic side of the northern entrance. But with that, I'd love to answer any questions if you have any.
I guess I have a traffic-related question. On Track C, is there a driveway directly into Track C, or could there be?
There could be. Technically, I believe it's a field entrance. I don't know that it's an improved entrance. On the south side, you see right across from the church, there's an entrance that they use to go in there. I don't know that it's a fully improved entrance. And in the future, they would have to have a driveway entrance through the city to be able to put that in and be able to develop that off.
Mr. Holland, would this create 3 separate tracks that could be sold individually? Like could Track C be separated and sold by itself?
Hopefully.
That would, that would require a replat, though.
Right.
to do that.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
So we're just saying that area could be zoned differently if it was replatted. That would require a discussion.
And even if it was replatted, it would still sit into the PUD conditions that we have here. So, but absolutely, it's one of those that if Track C is marketable, it's not marketable with the current zoning, because nobody's looking to put a house there either, so or recreational facility or something like that. So if that could be sold in that nature, of course, a plat before they do any construction or anything else, the owner understands that would be required.
Are there questions for the applicant at this point? Okay, thank you. To open this item up for a public hearing, is there anyone who would like to speak to this agenda item?
Good evening. My name is Margaret Foster Massalonis, and I reside in the first house, but it's all family that live there, and our granddaughter and her husband live next door, which we own that home too. But I did attend the meeting, and I got down there a little after 6, and there were just people standing there. It was the old courtroom when the Knights of Columbus had it. There was no formal meeting. I just asked the engineer what was planned, and he said, there's no plan. And I thought, how do you hire an engineer and you don't have a plan? So I don't understand that. But anyway, all this land that's owned by T&J and all that was all homesteaded land by our great-grandparents, as well as Foster Cemetery. And I've been on the cemetery board for a long, long time. I submitted a letter to Ms. Driver on September the 5th, and with my concerns spelled out. Without a plan, it makes me really nervous as a homeowner, and it's been there. We plan to live there the rest of our days and be safe there. And the traffic and all, as the man said, who was during the job, yes, there is a lot of traffic. And once the city allowed the sports zone to take down the stop sign that used to be there, there's a yield sign that you take your life in your hands when you come out of frontage road. So it's not going to get any safer for us to live there. But we have great concerns about the change in the zoning to PUD and light industrial, and why the secrecy of why doesn't have anybody have an idea. There's more behind the scenes, it seems like. But it would impact our way of life and have a greater impact on our health and safety, and also impact our property values. Anyway, I respect your attention and thank you for letting me speak, and I would hope that you would reverse your opinion. Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to ask the question of the speaker? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Okay, my name is John Palmer. I live at 3905 of the property right next to the entrance going in. And like was already stated early, during the basketball and football, there's quite a bit of traffic. It's hard to get in and out of there. Like I said, it used to be a stop sign, and I believe the city commission has changed to a yield sign, which they don't pay any attention. And also there was, before the building was built, there was the planning required to have another exit and entrance, which is on the south side of the filling station, which hardly anybody ever uses the thing, because they all use the north entrance. Semi, truck, and all go in and out constantly because they got the driving school there to teach people how to drive and back up with these big semi truck, which it's not supposed to use that entrance. And two, I believe that the church and the apartment house, also they have their own private entrance, but yet they built I believe it's a show on an illegal in and out of the road that goes around the church and access into the parking lot right behind our property. They also increased the traffic to the entrance there that we are subject to have access, And also, what my main question is, if the proposal says the land use is no change, if there's no change into the land use, what is the reason for changing the zone? Can you explain there, or what the...
I'll ask staff to address that.
Okay, and is that might be like I said, we trying to get along with it because of this a lot of illegal entrance and access to the place that we just kind of overlooking. But at the same time, I believe by changing it to the change the zone might be either to justify the activity that they're illegal now, or there's a what is it, top secret? What's the the justification, you know? And I feel that you guys should have as much information as you can so you can make an intelligent decision. That's about
Okay.
That's about all I have.
And I'm Julie Palma Ireland, I'm his daughter. And on the staff recommendations on item number 2, it says that you guys recommend access openings along Southwest Pullinger Road are for existing uses only, but the applicant has left out a lot of the existing uses, which is the white line commercial driver's license training. If you Google that, you pull it up, the address says 3907 Burlingame Road. Well, to have a commercial driver's license training, you got to have the commercial licensed drivers going down that road. They go up and down the road by my parents' house all the time. There's always at least one truck parked out back. I have lovely pictures for you. Here's right behind our property, and it's the semi-parked, the green here is the back of our property. And it's right there, and there's even a sign that says commercial truck parking. But that street is not legal to have commercial truck traffic, and not only that, but there's also, the state has a commercial driver's license down there. So if you don't want to get your commercial driver's license renewed, you go down there. Well, commercial trucks aren't supposed to be using that road. The road is only 50 feet wide.
The legal road is supposed to be 60, but it's only 50. That's not a justification for.
Yeah.
It cannot be a public entrance. It has to remain as private, because originally the entrance to that property was on the north side, right behind the apartment house. And since that entrance was only 30 feet, so I give the 50 feet next to the cemetery that went in.
So yeah, he gave 50 feet, so that's how that road's there at all. He sold it to him for $1.
Yes.
And then, what I was saying was, why would they leave out the fact that there's the commercial driver's license down there and the training school? Plus you have the dance school, the daycare, and then the church. And it all hooks up, so you have all these people coming in and out. And the funny thing that was said was there are 250,000 people a year going down to the sports zone, and they're using that one 50-foot entrance. And like my dad said, we've been really good-natured and want to get along, but the semis going up and down, we just kept going, okay, there's another semi, there's another semi. But this is semis and children going to play sports. That's a really bad mix, especially on that little thing with all those people coming in and out. You guys don't have a very good map of when you're going, even if you're going into the sports zone, there are people going, they can come out from the cemetery, come out from the properties of 3 houses, plus you got people going in and out this way. And it's an accident waiting to happen.
Also, if you notice that, in order for us to get out of the frontage road, and as you enter the main entrance there, we got to look at the people that are going out, and then right behind us is people coming in. And you kind of, it's.
You can't see the people that are turning in off Burlingame Road when you're pulling out here until you're out there, and then they're right on you. It's a real mess.
The distance between when they turn in and where we get out, it's only about 25 feet. There's no.
I have a question before you all sit down. Just, is there signage that says no semis turning in there?
No.
Nope, there's a yield sign that's about this tall that the SUVs can't even see.
We have
Madam Chair,
one
I
other
have a
question.
question. You mentioned a stop sign used to be in place and was taken down. Where was that stop sign at?
In the same place where the yield sign is now.
Is that yielding onto Burlingame Road? Or
No, the yield coming off of Burlingame Road.
Yeah.
Where's your drawing, Daddy?
There's,
I think it's on the frontage road.
We've got a diagram of it if you'd like to see it. It's where the yield side was. So it was the people coming from the sports zone to go out onto Burlingame Road. They had to stop there
Right.
and make sure people coming in or going out.
okay.
And it did help a lot, but it really slowed down traffic. The traffic gets backed up as it is.
I don't know.
Will you hold it up?
See, you see, as in order to exit from the frontage road, if we go out and there's people coming in, they want going out, and you got to, there's hardly any time, that they're right behind you when you're trying to, exit. Like I said, then the apartment house and the church has got their own entrance here, but there's a road behind the church here that goes.
It's shown on there.
Yeah, it shows on there, but.
Thank you, that was very helpful, I appreciate that.
Okay, can I ask one more question you could ask of them? It says that on your notes that they're gonna do a welding tinsmith machine shop. And we had a question, what's that and why that wasn't mentioned?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address this agenda item?
Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Massalonis. I currently reside at 5808 Southwest 26th Street here in Topeka. I am currently the president of Foster Cemetery there at 3949 Southwest Burlingame Road. In opposition of the changes due to we're not sure what's the plan. And I was not able to make the meeting, but touched base with my mother and asked what was the meeting about to get information. And when she tells me it was like in a closet and a map and do you have any questions, and just very vague. So actually, if I would have wouldn't have got much out of the meeting, okay? The concern that we have on the board, and I'm representing all the board members of the cemetery, is traffic, and when you're laid to rest, you kind of want to have a quiet, peaceful area to, be at peace. So knowing what's around, the cemetery is actually all nonprofit. Anything that needs to be done is all by any donations we get or people that buy the plots to keep the cemetery updated. And those funds, between the mowing and stuff, it pretty well drains it a lot. So I'm very concerned of just the overall, what's the plan, And talking about traffic, that's been talked about many, many times. And like I said, I was raised at 3901 Burlingame and continually trying to exit. And there's times I've exited, but I had a nice lifted truck that I actually was watching the people coming off of Burlingame to go into the sports zone, knowing that that's my focus is to watch that because these people are yielding and many times pull out. And these people come right up, flipping me off, whatever it might be, and I just basically do it just to say, you're gonna hit me, go ahead and hit me. There's a yield sign back there, and they're all looking around like, so that is the traffic thing, and why they can't do some kind of a one lane, one way in, everybody exits the other way, so we don't have to worry about trying to get out of our own, between the cemetery or at, other residents. So I would say, more information, be nice to know what the plan is so we can visualize, so we don't have more, people up to no good that could vandalize the cemetery that would come out of our own pockets. So that's all I have to say, and I appreciate your time.
Any questions for the speaker?
I know you usually speak in front of people really good, but, I guess I never spoke for them. Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this agenda item? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this meeting. A couple of questions for staff. Could you clarify for us and the audience what your understanding of the intent of this request is? My understanding is that it's sort of like we've heard on other cases tonight, to open up potential possibilities for marketability, selling property in the future. Is that, am I understanding that correct?
I'll respond to that question.
Thank you.
That's right. That's been the purpose of this zoning change from the beginning. And it actually started out as, from the owners and their representatives, we'd like to change the zoning to I-1 because I-1 broadens the range of uses that would be permitted there. And on our advice, they amended their application. Also, since they've amended their application, it's been amended again because we have the opportunity to comment on it. And we do a review. We send out notes to the applicant, and then they respond with changes, and they agreed to do that. And then the conditions represent another iteration of changes that staff is recommending to the master plan. So I'm going to address quickly some concern by the neighbors, which is a valid concern, is that the applicant doesn't know what they're going to do with the property. That's probably the essence of the application. They don't really know exactly what they're going to do with the property. It's not the best situation. I think that the city would always prefer to have some idea of what the applicant or the owner proposes, but it's not a requirement. And when the Planning Commission recommends and the governing body approves zone changes, sometimes they're approving just a zoning classification with a broad range of potential uses. With the PUD, it actually narrows that down a little more, and that's what this PUD represents. I don't know if you asked this question, but some of the uses that are on the property have evolved over time. For example, the truck traffic, I don't believe any of the uses that have been approved officially generate truck traffic. That must be coming from the truck driving school. That's not something that the city approved. And I think that's something that needs to be looked into. I don't want to say it's not legal, but it's not something that was officially approved by any of the entitlements, that, the special permits and the conditional use permits that were issued.
Okay, so the zoning that's in place now is a special use permit, is that right?
It's the base zoning is R1.
Right.
And then there are conditional use permits, and I think one was a special permit. Is that right, Annie? And one was for the recreational use, and one was for the Knights of Columbus, using that as a social club headquarters. And there was some action taken to allow them to have some limited alcohol sales there and that type of thing. And then it evolved into a driver's license office, and then it evolved into apparently something else that we weren't even aware of when we got the application. And that's not an intent to criticize the applicant. Sometimes the applicant doesn't know everything that's going on, or at least the applicant's representative doesn't always know everything that's going on. There's a lot of things going on here that make this kind of complicated.
Very complex site, yes. Yes.
Chair, Mr. Hall, would the driver's license and a daycare currently not be allowed then under the current zoning?
The driver's license, I'm not sure about that. That was not specifically approved. That's kind of a institutional use. I don't think it's specifically allowed. is a truck driving school. That's more of a vocational school, and that actually requires the zoning that they're requesting. So the zoning they're requesting would accommodate that. It doesn't automatically accommodate truck traffic on that main entrance, I don't believe, but it would accommodate that.
But the truck traffic is addressed with one of the conditions, because it would not be allowed on that drive, that north drive.
As recommended, the current sanctioned uses don't include truck traffic that I'm aware of. I don't think they include truck traffic. So I believe as recommended, if trucks were going to use that entrance, potentially that would have to be approved, and the city might even require a traffic study. That's what that condition number 2 states. And there is another entrance. There is another access that can be used, and that's the access to the south.
Let me have his question and then we'll see where.
So would the limiting the truck traffic is on the drive, but the trucks on the parking lot would be still allowed if they got there another way? If they got there through the south entrance?
I think that's correct. I think it still requires some study, some kind of traffic study, maybe a limited traffic impact analysis, but I think that's a correct statement, what you just stated.
I know we have at least one other question, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond.
There's a lot of reference on truck traffic. I'm also wondering, this being a sports facility, buses, would that be similarly restricted by the same restriction on truck? A full-size bus, I can't believe there's a sports facility with courts on it where you don't have teams.
In my opinion, it would not be restricted because it was approved, and I don't have the conditional use permit and all the conditions and all that information right in front of me, but I think that if it was approved as a recreational use like it has been, buses would be part of that. I don't think that would be considered something that's not allowed. Do you agree?
Would you like to address some of these
Yes,
questions?
ma'am, Madam Chair. And over the years, as the amount of people that have come, there have been, they do have typical delivery trucks that come in for concessions for the sports zone as well. So I don't foresee anything like that or would anticipate trying to change anything like that. It would be a typical commercial situation where supplies are coming in from a truck and being loaded into a facility. So no different, it's similar, but, it's a smaller business. Even our small engineering firm has trucks come by that delivers paper and such like that. So I don't want to get too lost. I knew they do have trucks that come in because of all of the fields down in the floodway. They do spread gravel and such like that and try to maintain those roadways per City of Topeka comments to make sure they're I know City of Topeka keeps pretty close tabs on the roadways out there to make sure they're accessible.
So just a question then, since there are these staff recommended conditions on the approval, condition number 2 is the one specifically that talks about the traffic. It says the northernmost driveway is intended only for passenger vehicles and light trucks. Semi-tractor trailers shall not use this northernmost driveway opening onto Burlingame Road. So there would need to be some sort of signage or something put in place to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Absolutely, and I do believe, and correct me if I could, Annie or Mike, in case the use in the future was ever changed to an light industrial use that would incur more truck traffic. I don't know that we were focusing on the truck traffic at current level just because our applicant doesn't believe there is significant truck traffic. They do have the truck traffic, the truck driving school, which I believe has a truck sitting out there for the commercial training, which is on the south side of the property, south of the arena.
Yes.
What would you determine as light truck traffic for this area?
4 trucks a week. Sure. Can I have an owner come and speak?
Please.
He would probably be a much better representative.
It's kind of hard to determine.
Identify yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Tom Schmetline. It's kind of hard to determine which is using the north entrance or the south entrance. We were forced to add the south entrance when we constructed the arena. And that was because of additional traffic flow, traffic count. It wasn't necessarily because of trucks or thereon. So people have learned coming out of there, especially down by the fields, that it is slower to go out the north entrance. And so we go out, they by themselves choose to go out the south entrance. I have no problem to direct, if need be, the truck traffic out, but the drive that they're coming in on is allowable for truck traffic, always has, because before we had the south entrance, all the trucks for our concession stands, any deliveries, fire trucks, buses, all came in on the same roadway.
Are you clear then that this condition would require you to change that? It would require some kind of signage or mechanism to restrict that?
Sure, we can put no trucks, I'm not opposed to that, I really am. I still can't protect the Massaloneses from, or De Palmas, or any of the neighbors for people that are turning off of Burlingame. We've had a stop sign on Burlingame from our very start of our existence out there. It's just moved closer to Burlingame at this point on the other side of the frontage road. So actually, that becomes an unmarked intersection, and yes, any unmarked intersection in Topeka is dangerous, and you have to be aware of that. If it's traffic that is coming out of Sport Zone, it is actually, I think, I don't know, on traffic, on an unmarked intersection, you have to yield to the traffic to your right on an unmarked intersection, which would be coming out of Sport Zone. And as far as that coming in off there, I mean, it's such a short distance, we're only talking about 50 feet. I don't know, but I'm willing to do what we can. If you want to direct the truck traffic to the south, yes, more than willing.
Okay. Any other questions?
Question. Is the site currently still used as a sports zone and as a sports complex?
Yes, sir. And will continue. There's no, you know, and I know the question is why are you doing this? Why are you going forward? It's a couple of businessmen that want flexibility as they go further on into the future to market the property. There is no buyer, nothing, no contracts have been signed. They would love to have a buyer, but they do not have one at this time.
Someone brought up, there was a question about a welding. Was that one of the possible uses, or is that something that's been mentioned as
That was identified in the PUD as an allowed use on track B. I think there is a condition to indicate that would be an enclosed welding and tinsmith shop, so nothing would be outside. They're outdoors.
I believe that was just in regards to specified I-1 uses that would be allowed.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Very quickly, the hearing is closed, so very.
Can I make one comment?
One comment.
The south entrance is so obscure that a lot of people don't know there is.
Please come up to the thing so we can hear you.
The south entrance is so obscure. It's got a, you see a filling station there, there's no sign that says sports zone. The people to follow that. So it's consequently, a lot of people don't know there, so they all use the north side.
Right.
If they put a sign on the south side like they got them on the north, I think that would help the situation somewhat.
Do you understand that this proposal then, what they're asking for, would actually require them to address some of those things? That's,
Yeah,
okay.
but how are they going to keep the semis from going up and down that street when they didn't even admit that semis were going there? And the driver's license is only for commercial, okay? So it's for trucks,
It sounds like
semi-trucks.
there's some other issues that the city is gonna have to research and look into with that,
See,
for the uses that's already allowed now.
Well, but if they're changing the zoning to allow bigger uses for their property, they didn't use the current zoning to restrict what they did because they have the commercial driver's license down there. So we're wanting to change it to make it more uses for them when they've already had more uses than are legally allowed with the current zoning,
I understand.
which seems really backwards.
Okay, I understand. We're gonna have a discussion here.
Okay.
Thank you. Thoughts and discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
can I offer a suggestion?
I appreciate it.
That might help everybody. I don't know if it was totally clear what the allowed uses will be going forward,
That would be great.
because it might address those questions. When we get an application, and I don't know if Mike, Annie, you can do that. When we get an application and in this situation occurs where, we see that there's an existing use that may not be conforming to the existing zoning, but they're applying for zoning that may allow it, then we would let it, obviously we wouldn't enforce it, we'd let it continue so we can know if that new zoning will allow that non-conforming use. I don't know that's the case here, but I'd just like my staff to address what is the proposed uses, what are the allowed uses that would come out of this new zoning, and would it address the existing uses that we found out about tonight?
Thank you.
Okay, I think I can address that. So, currently, the base zoning is R1. So any other, and R1 is a single-family residential district.
Can you just address?
Yeah. The new zoning would allow office and institutional uses. So offices, some recreation. Actually, you could have a vocational school, which would be a truck driving school. But in order to do that, you still have to comply with conditions. So with the new zoning, there are conditions, and if some new information comes out of this meeting that requires further conditions, like maybe there's more that needs to be done with traffic analysis, and I think that's possible. That could be something that the commission decides to add on to staff's recommendations. In addition to the ordinary I-2 uses, the master plan allows some uses that would normally require I-2 zoning, or excuse me, I-1 zoning, which is light industrial zoning. And rather than just saying I-1 uses are allowed, we worked with the applicant, suggested that they limit the range of uses, and they're listed on here. So if you look at Tract A, it's pretty much limited to O&I2 uses on the master plan with some very limited storage. And the storage is limited by the size of the building. I think the existing building's 30,000 square feet. With Tract B, which is where the larger building is located.
Sorry.
So?
No, I didn't mean that. While you're on Tract A.
Yeah.
So one of our conditions was to remove the storage use from Tract A.
Okay, thank you.
Is it just, okay.
Thank you. Okay, so Tract B, what Tract B does is it doesn't just say you can enlarge the building, it limits the area of the storage building or the building to the one that's there now, which I believe is 50,000 square feet. So the uses that would be allowed in addition to the office and institutional uses would be enclosed warehousing and storage facility, agricultural product sales and storage, contractor yard, machinery equipment, that should be a contractor shop, however. That's a condition, right, Annie?
Yes.
Okay. And I think, let me look at that one condition.
There's another removal.
We removed truck facility, so truck freight terminal from the master plan with our recommendation.
Yep.
Warehouse, storage, and distribution be permitted, be all enclosed. No outside storage. Welding and tinsmithing is, in the machine shop is listed on the master plan. The condition that's recommended would require that be enclosed. And then also manufacturing and processing type 1 would be permitted. Manufacturing and processing type 1 is very clearly defined by our zoning ordinance, and we can read that to you if you'd like. But keep in mind there are 3 different levels of intensity in our zoning regulations when it comes to manufacturing and processing, and type 1 is the least intense of those. What's also required is if they do change the use to these more intensive uses, that they would have to have a landscape buffer along the east property line between their property and the adjacent cemetery and the residential uses.
Thank you for that. That was very helpful.
Mr. Hall, that landscaping buffer is 6 foot, is that correct? I believe I read somewhere. I don't remember where I saw that.
It's landscaping note number 1, which is very small and difficult to read. I don't want to read the whole note because it's very long. It's a minimum of 6 feet, is that right?
Yes.
And it's consistent with the type of buffer we would require between a commercial use and a residential use that might not have been required at the time.
Could a condition be if this were to change in the future that a larger landscaping buffer could be required?
That would be possible. That could be a condition. Such as 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet.
Other questions or discussion from the commission?
I'm not exactly in favor. I think it needs to be reworked and brought back to us, in my opinion. I would have a hard time voting on really anything because I feel like there's just so many stipulations and things that would need to be adjusted to feel comfortable voting in favor of it.
I agree. It's very uncomfortable even sorting out what's happening now, much less in the future.
What they want.
I would concur with that. When I'm looking at note 2, it's talking about for the existing uses only, not the existing, approved existing uses. And I don't have the underlying document to tell me what the existing uses are. And so unless we clear that out, and it sounds like the owners, are not necessarily in a hurry. They want to get it done, I'm sure. But there's nothing ultra time sensitive here, that they might have a proposal for improved signage that would address part of the problem. I have personally been to that facility many times and to many like it. I have not noticed an undue amount of truck traffic relative to other similar sites, but I wasn't looking for it, and it may just not have been there at the time I was. Facilities like that and with where that frontage road runs do present problems, and I don't think I've ever seen one where you have a series of houses having to, every time games release, there is a quick flow of heavy traffic, then maybe an hour without, and then a bunch more, and then And so if you have to get out at one of those times, it would be best to improve it as much as possible. It's never going to be great with that circumstance.
Are there any other thoughts?
I tend to concur with.
Sure. Okay.
I think one of my concerns, the semis are probably, if I were in the homeowner's shoes, that'd probably be my bigger frustration, because having a semi in your backyard kind of sucks. But there's a lot of car traffic there, but that's what it was for. And so I don't feel bad about the car traffic necessarily, because the property was sold based on having that type of traffic there, so. But I think that the semi is kind of my kind of tripping, what I'm nervous about. And I think one way, maybe if something changed, maybe if they kept the current use with the sports field, we have a parking lot there as it is, maybe, I don't know if there's a way to, if it ever changed to something else, to require a larger landscaping buffer, that would make me feel better. If it changes, you're probably not going to need that big of a lot, depending on what you change it to. We don't know what that is. But maybe a larger buffer could be put there with a berm and trees, something to alleviate the homeowner's sightlines of what's going to be there. I think the city, I think that your staff did a good job of trying to address a lot of the concerns. I do appreciate that. I see that on here. I guess I'm kind of on the fence on it.
I think I agree with some of the other thoughts about maybe giving it a little bit more time and reworking it and seeing if more of it can get into the plan without having to have so many conditions, clarify some of those things like existing approved uses, and if there is a way to propose, implement a traffic study, because I think that intersection is problematic with the frontage road there. If signage needs to be developed in some way, let's address that.
I wonder if maybe it could be changed to a one-way, one way in, one way out the other, south side. So once you're in the property, you'll see it's a one-way, you'll know you have to go out the other way. But
That may not address the truck issue, but it would help with traffic. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, if I might maybe recommend, I kind of get a consensus of y'all. What about a motion to defer to a future meeting so that staff and the applicant can address the issues raised tonight, if that's appropriate?
Would you be interested in making that motion?
Madam Chair, I would move that we defer this issue until the next, until a later date, not specified, so that staff and the applicant can address the issues and bring it back to us at a suitable time.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Lawson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please, Chris, take the roll vote.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Mr. Kennard?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
And Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Last on our agenda under the public hearing section is ACZR 1901, proposal to be presented by the Topeka Planning Commission to amend the Topeka Municipal Code. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Need to advance to there. So the commission has gotten a briefing on this at a previous meeting in June specifically. So I won't spend a lot of time talking about the background. just kind of get to the basics and then be happy to answer questions. The memo provides a pretty good overview, and then there's an attached document that really, if you want to be educated about small cell wireless facilities, it's really a pretty effective document for that. Let me start by saying what they're not. They're not what you typically think of as a cell tower. So this photo is what is now called a macro cell wireless facilities. That's a new term in the past year, probably. This is on private property. It's not in a street right-of-way. And these are 100 feet or more in height, typically. I don't know how tall this one is. Could be 120, could be 105. Monopole, but they're also lattice towers. It's not that. This is really what it is. It's a short pole. And typically, you can have a wireless facility, antenna, associated equipment co-located on a street light. You can also have it on its own pole. If you look at the figure to the far right, that's just a wireless facility. That's not a light pole. But you can, typically they're located on light poles. The definition is no higher than 50 feet and no higher than 10% higher than any adjacent building. Let me see. So what we're proposing is this definition. It's in the back of your packet. Each antenna would be located no more than 6 cubic feet in volume, or in case of an antenna that has exposed elements, the antenna and all the antenna's exposed elements could fit within an imaginary enclosure no more than 6 cubic feet. Primary equipment enclosures no larger than 17 cubic feet in volume, or facilities comprised of such higher limits as the FCC has excluded from review. So this definition allows for some evolution in federal laws. And if you look back at this image, you can see one on the left, the antenna is on the top, there's a box on the front of the pole, and on the right, it's not a very good example, but there's some antenna, it's kind of an array of antennas, and then there's equipment boxes associated with them. That's how they're defined. Why is the amendment important? Well, this is a fairly new thing, and it's for 5G wireless instead of 4G. There's a greater need for density of facilities, not large, tall facilities, but a greater density and closer to street level for the way these wireless facilities will be used, for the way the 5G will be used. Our code didn't anticipate these when it was written because they weren't around. It anticipated communication towers of like the one I showed you earlier in the earlier image. So now, unless we do this, these microcell facilities, the only way we can define them is a communication tower. And a communication tower in most zoning districts requires a conditional use permit. Conditional use permit is typically a 90-day process. That doesn't even include the building permit for them. And that doesn't even meet the FCC's requirements, or barely meets them for timing. So the FCC requires that permits be issued within a certain amount of time. It's a pretty small window. The other thing is the conditional use permit process. The city is very constrained. All cities are very constrained, very limited in their ability to prohibit them or to overly restrict them. So it's a long process for no reason, really, and it just is difficult. And recent conversations we've had with the telecom companies or their consultants is that they have a whole batch of them, and we could get 20, 25 applications all at once. And that's just a nightmare scenario. So the amendment does not codify all the standards. It makes reference to this document that we shared with you in June, which is now called the City of Topeka, Shawnee County Small Cell Wireless Facilities General Design and Aesthetic Requirements. This is something that we wrote. So planning development worked with Public Works to create this, to get it created as soon as possible so we could prepare for proposals for new facilities. We have the ability to make revisions to this as needed, as more information comes to light, as we use it, see what works, what doesn't. That's the nice thing about having this document not in code, because amending code is as you know, is a lengthy process. So the amendment that's proposed, if you look at the back of your packet, it revises the definition of communication tower. So it clearly excludes small cell wireless facilities. And then it has a definition of small cell wireless facility. And it's very specific. And it's consistent with the FCC order. So then also part of the amendment is to amend the zoning and land use tables to add a new category, small cell wireless facilities. And the way this matrix is used, an S means it's an allowed use, but it needs to meet certain specific use requirements. So it's basically permitted by right in every zoning district. And then you have this new section that would be allowed, this new paragraph that would be allowed to section 18.225.010 that would specify how these are to be handled. So the application, keep in mind that almost all of these are probably going to be in the right-of-way. So the city would also, or the provider would also enter into some kind of an agreement with the city, separate and apart from the zoning decision. And then it would require compliance with the aesthetic requirements. And within the past couple of months, there have been some minor revisions to those requirements, just to address a few different issues. And so we think staff thinks it's important to move this forward and is recommending that you make a motion to forward a recommendation of approval to the governing body so they can approve the amendments. Be happy to take any questions, of course.
Chair, I have a question.
Please.
Just a general question. Mike, do these eventually take the place of the big towers in the future, you think? Or is this are we still going to be putting up the large tall towers and these at the same time, or will these generally start taking the place of those real tall towers?
Yes, and as for your question, the information we have, the literature, and we watched a couple slide presentations from experts on this. These do not replace the need for the towers. They complement what the towers do. I'm not really that educated on the details and the technology, but they serve kind of a different purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam
for staff?
Chair, Mr. Hall, I'm absorbing this slower than I'd like to. In my brain, it's slowing down. When are the aesthetic requirements required for these?
When are they?
Yeah, is it for all of them in the city? Or is
Yes.
it for right-of-ways as well?
As proposed, they would apply to both right-of-way and if they're on private property.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm glad we have some aesthetic standards. That one on the right isn't my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
so.
I agree.
And they do come in huge batches. We get those at my office,
Oh.
big fat batches. There are no any other questions. I don't see anyone from the public who would like to address this. So, public hearing is not necessary. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, based on the information provided by staff, I would make a motion recommending approval to the governing body.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion, questions? Chris?
Mr. Dean?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Mr. Kennard?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Last item on our agenda is communications to the commission, and we have a special presentation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Before that special presentation, I'll just mention sign code, as many of you know, was passed 9 to 1 on last Tuesday, September 10th. Thank you, Madam Chair, for being there. You were the only...
Mayor called my name. I was like, whoa. I didn't know it was going to be.
You were the only public commenter?
Here. Okay.
So that showed very well. And I will say, I think we don't do that often. I say we, you, or who's ever in that position. We don't do that very often. But it is, I've never heard a bad thing when that does happen. They always really appreciate to see a face with this body, with the work that went on behind the scenes. So I know that went very, very well. So thank you. And there was one amendment made to that. Councilmember Lesser moved to reduce the grace period for the portable message center signs from 2 years to 1 year. So that did pass. I'm sorry.
I did my best.
Did what you could do. And there was 3 other tried amendments that did not pass. So it stood the test of day. You did an incredible job. And I've thanked Mr. Hall time and time again. I'll thank him again one more time. Thank you and the committee's work. Incredible leadership to get to that point. So great news, good story. Thank you. I also, before I get one more thing, from time to time I've been asked about public comment before the Planning Commission. We've never turned anybody down that I know of that wanted to speak before you. But just throw it out there. If you have any comments, it's something we can add to the end of the agenda as a perfunctory thing we do every time, just so you as a public body can say you have that availability. I don't know that we have to, but I just think it from a transparency standpoint. Let me know if you have any concerns about that. But like
just an open public comment, not addressing anything specific on the agenda, but just wanting to address the body. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So something, I don't know if anything have to change with regard to rules or bylaws or anything like that, but the intent is it would have to be relevant to the work you do. So if they want to, talk about, I think you get my point. So, but let me know, and I'll talk to Ms. Feeney and see if there's any changes we need to make if we want to do that. And I'll put that out before we do that to you. Give you a chance. Okay. Well, I hate these moments. We call it a special presentation because it's usually a very special person. Tonight we are saying goodbye, at least from the commission, to Commissioner Jordan. She's served her time. That didn't sound right, did it? She has served her time well. How's that? And we want to offer a token of our appreciation. And before I read this, I just wanted to note that I believe, Ms. Jordan, you probably were the first commissioner that came on after I became director.
I think so.
Yeah, because you're the first, yeah, because
I was
the other
lucky.
people we've said goodbye to, I didn't really care about that. Yeah, so you're very special. I just want to thank you personally. I think the experience you brought, the perspective you brought from common sense and the neighborhood kind of perspective was just so helpful to us and our deliberations, and I know we're going to be hard pressed to replace that. So let me read, presented by the City of Topeka, the 16th day of September 2019, in recognition of Carol Jordan for her service to the city as a member of the Topeka Planning Commission. Planning Commissioner, October 2013 to September 2019. Michelle De La Isla, Mayor of Topeka.
Thank you.
Give this.
So can I make a little speech? So I was reflecting upon these last few years, and in happiness, not for the ending of my sentence, but for the fact that all the great things that have happened in the last few years. I'm real proud of what the planning department has done. We got sidewalks, we got bikes, we got signs. It seems to me that as a Topekan, I'm very confident that our planning process will carry Topeka into 2022 and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you again.
Very nice. All right, well, with that, we come to the end of our agenda. Is anyone objecting to a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.